A very simple question. What is money? And more importantly, where does it come from and who creates it? You'd be surprised that very, very few people can answer this question. That's because there are few people that understand the financial system, and this is a result of the actual underlying mechanisms that are rarely discussed openly. There is a reason why young people are not schooled with an education that includes banking, finance, and moreover, what money is and where it comes from. So, as this is the first video of the new year and of the 2020s, I thought I would again try to distill this very, very important information into as easily digestible a presentation as possible. Before this video starts, I'd like to encourage you to subscribe to this channel, of course, if you like this kind of content. Also, if you are already subscribed, please check to see that you are still subscribed, as YouTube regularly unsubscribes people from channels like this. Also, please like, comment, and share this video on your own social media to help the channel grow and reach a new audience. Thank you very much in advance for this, and let's get started. The antiquated term usury, which in today's parlance is generally understood to denote excessive interest, but its original and primary meaning was any interest at all. Making money from money was illegal under church law. The church held it to be a grave sin, and this doctrine was upheld by the civil powers, and there were harsh penalties for those that broke the law. Put simply, what that meant was that there was a prohibition against charging interest on money lent. The church placed these restrictions on charging interest because money is not a good, it is a measure. However, since the introduction of paper money, this distinction has progressively eroded. But the reasoning went that to lend money at interest is to make money from nothing, thus transforming money into a good. Because Christians were ethically opposed to money lending, as are Muslims to this day, it was the Jews living in Europe that simply had no issue with it that would take up the business of money lending on the continent. During the Middle Ages, local rulers and church officials closed many professions to the Jews, and thus they began to specialize in money lending and other practices that were forbidden to Christians by church law. Throughout this time, peasants and aristocrat alike became indebted to Jewish moneylenders, and this, without question, helped lead to the sporadic attacks and expulsions of the Jews in countries across the continent for centuries. To be clear, Jews weren't allowed into banking or into money lending. They created it out of necessity, and in doing so were the progenitors of a system that still exists today. It began when valuables were deposited with people who owned strong boxes, who were inevitably goldsmiths and moneylenders, usually both. In a short time, these proto-bankers realized that they could make large sums of money by making loans against property that didn't belong to them, by making loans to other people at interest. This system soon made these men monstrously wealthy. Paper money, as we understand it, came into existence when moneylenders issued credit notes to depositors who then began to trade these notes amongst themselves in commercial transactions. And here is where we almost meet the modern world, as it didn't take long for these moneylenders to realize that they could simply start creating money out of absolutely nothing. They began to issue credit notes with nothing backing them and putting them into circulation as interest-bearing debts. Through experience, they rationalized that no more than 10% of their depositors would withdraw their assets at any one given time. Thus, they could safely issue notes up to 10 times more than the gold and silver they had on deposit. And voila, modern fractional banking was born. Create money out of nothing at all, put it into circulation via interest-bearing debt that has to be repaid via labor or goods and services produced, and in time, bankers in Europe became unbelievably wealthy, and in many cases took on the role as shadow rulers of nations. The establishment of the Bank of England, the model on which most modern central banks have been based, was devised by Charles Montague, 1st Earl of Halifax, in 1694, following a proposal by the banker William Paterson, a Scotsman, 3 years earlier. At the time, the Crown was essentially broke and had recently suffered a decisive defeat, and money was desperately needed to finance the ongoing war with the French. In return for the needed money, a private group of financiers led by Montague proposed that the subscribers were to be incorporated as the governor and company of the Bank of England, with long-term banking privileges, including the issue of notes. SHOP was set up in the semi-autonomous city of London, and the authority to create money out of nothing at a national level and then lent it interest was handed over to a small group of private financiers that called themselves the Bank of England. In modern times, banking has become extremely sophisticated, but the underlying mechanisms remain the same. While the Bank of England was, in theory, nationalized in 1946, the bank still lends to the government, a government that supposedly controls the Bank of England, and it lends to the government at interest. An interesting anecdote is that as recently as 2015, the government of the United Kingdom has finally finished paying the interest on debt accrued during the First World War, the Crimean War, and wait for it, the Napoleonic Wars. Most people don't realize that service payments on interest of government debt created by central banks out of nothing eats up an enormous percent of tax revenues. Consider the massive increase in interest costs on the national debt projected over the next decade. In the US, the Congressional Budget Office estimates that interest payments on the national debt will more than triple before the end of the 2020s. In 2015, the U.S. government spent $223 billion in tax dollars just to service the national debt, none of that going to the principal. In 2019, it has been projected by the government that American taxpayers will have to shoulder a total of $593.1 billion in interest for the fiscal year. Numbers have not officially been tabulated yet, but this is their estimate for 2019. That's almost $600 billion that can't be used to educate or replace badly worn out infrastructure. It can't be used to alleviate poverty or anything else. It's being used to service the interest on the national debt. And this is where a massive percent of the tax money that you pay to the government goes. And you should understand this. You should also understand that most of the debt-backed money that is created by private banks through the same system of fractional reserve banking that goes all the way back to the Middle Ages, well, the money created out of nothing and then lent at interest is literally the biggest global scam never talked about. Moreover, private banks are still able to privatize profits and socialize losses through taxpayer-funded subsidies and bailouts, the most obscene of recent time being the fallout from the 2008 financial crisis.
Du gamla, du fria, du fjällhöga nord, du tysta, du
So tolerant.
Sweden is, for all intents and purposes, the guinea pig of globalization. As that once beautiful and tranquil country has normalized astonishing dysfunction socially, the Swedes' tolerance has been weaponized, and those on the outside can watch only in horror as the country is cannibalized from within. Now the country is being used to test the next level of international finance, the cashless society based around credit and debit cards for every type of commercial transaction. A cashless society would remove all barriers or even the pretense of overt control by the financial cartels, and it nails the coffin lid of debt slavery shut on much of the planet's citizens, but especially on all of those that attempt to live off the financial grid for whatever reason they so choose. And thus, It's very clear to see that using a debit card or a credit card everywhere for financial transactions is not about making things more convenient for you. It's about creating a cashless society that will give those that control the system complete control over everyone within their jurisdiction. There will be no way to skirt excessive taxation, no way to privatize your spending habits, or simply where you go and what you do. It will complete the push for the total surveillance society of every man, woman, and child. And here is the most important hot take, if you will, going forward into the 2020s. It's not the government that gains from all of this, but those that rule and fund the politicians that warm the seats of Congresses and parliaments around the world, the international banking cartels. And they have won time and time and time again over the centuries because of their ill-gotten wealth and backdoor dealings that have stayed in the shadows. This is most likely the reason for the new push by social media, including YouTube, to censor videos that are focused on cryptocurrencies. In the end, the system might allow annoyances, but it will not tolerate challenges to the system. The internet is a very powerful light to shine on this vampire-like system that brings high taxation, resource wars, and devastating poverty to billions. It's time we use it while we still can. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this kind of material, please consider subscribing. Also follow me over at BitChute, which is the world's only free speech social media platform for now. And I will see you going into 2020. Happy New Year, everyone. Bye-bye for now.